All right. First of all, let me thank everyone who's holding on here with us. And we will end on time today. I can definitely promise you that. My name is Deborah Johnson, and I've been a member of the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction for about 9 years now. And the UN, that group, the UNDRR, was renamed at the Global Platform in Geneva in May from UNISDR. And I serve currently as the vice chair of the US Arise Network, which is a private sector alliance for resilient societies. So it is my pleasure today to moderate this session on resource mobilization and enabling technologies. And, you know, as we kind of listen to this esteemed panel, I really want to plant in your minds the kinds of connections that these enabling technologies can really address. Many of the things that we've heard today are issues, are opportunities, are challenges that these technologies can really, I think, advance forward for us. So, you know, please keep that in mind. We will have a very interactive session at the end. So please, you know, get your questions ready and your comments as well. We welcome comments as well. I'm really not overstating it, I think, when I say our panelists are innovators and leaders that are shaping and defining a digital ecosystem capable of accelerating SDG implementation at speed and scale. The power of these systems is in their ability to connect and enable the secure and free flows of capital and investments. So I'm going to start by introducing Dr. Polzer. And so Dr. Miroslav Polzer is Secretary General, International Association for the Advancement of Innovative Approaches to Global Challenges, or IAAI. He is the founder and CEO of International Association for the Achievement of Innovative Approaches to Global Challenges. I sort of like this one, GLOCHA, I think it's always fun to say it. And this is a United Nations accredited civil society organization. His presentation is Resource Mobilization and Technology Deployment for Climate Action and SDGs Implementation in Lake Chad region. Nero?
Thank you very much, Deborah, for your kind introduction, and thank you very much to the Nigerian mission, and especially to Dr. Ibrahim Modibo for allowing us to be partner of this important conference today, and to speak here to you, to showcase to you what we are doing in the field of multi-stakeholder engagement in sustainable development action, how to use social innovation and technological innovation to provide meaningful and rewarding engagement opportunities for everybody in climate action and sustainable development action. So we are here today at, okay, here is the pointer. Let's get to the next one. So we are here at a solutions conference. In the outline of the conference and in the call for papers for this conference, there was written, there's a strong need to explore new ways of cooperation between public authorities and non-state actors in the region to bring new ideas, new technologies, and the necessary financial resources to the people of the Lake Chad Basin region in line with global sustainable development goals. So we've heard in previous sessions what national governments can do, how they can connect their needs, their potentials with global community, with the United Nations in programs that have been presented. But this is only part of the solution. There are so many other players, even subnational governments or local authorities, they are not counted as state actors, and they also don't have no formal role in the UN system. But they have so many, so great potentials to offer to solving these sustainable development challenges in places like Lake Chad. And especially also young people, entrepreneurial, passionate people who want to really have a good life and do good things and have also a livelihood of this. And for these kind of stakeholders, non-state actors, there are no real entry points existing in the existing United Nations design, but also in the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you. Sustainable Development Goals implementation mechanism in general. There is no empowerment and inspiration mechanism, and so we are complementing this gap. We are filling this gap with our multi-stakeholder partnership, GLOCHA. We are solution providers for innovative approaches to global challenges that are delivering on the ground in places like Lake Chad. Our mission is getting everybody engaged in sustainable development goals action and in climate action. So we have these concepts and solutions that we have developed on the global level. And luckily, we have also partners who have brought us to the Lake Chad region, local NGOs and also resource partners, Al-Najat charity organization, who are, so to say, problem owners and also people with resources that can make things happen in the Lake Chad region. That's how we got connected with the Lake Chad Basin region, and now we are going to present you a few elements of the solutions that we are bringing there. So our solutions for local communities and for young entrepreneurs are, on the one hand, technology deployment. There is so great technological solutions are existing already, but people in disadvantaged places like Lake Chad, they don't have access to it. And so we need to create the bridge and all the necessary elements that this kind of technologies can be used by those people who need it. And for instance, we have developed solutions in the field of satellite-based e-health and e-learning, sustainable energy entrepreneurship, and atmospheric water generation is an area where we are experimenting. And we have large-scale resource mobilization solutions that we are working on. It's not really delivering super results yet. And the third element, the third systemic solution here is that we are creating the global local ecosystem for Agenda 2030 entrepreneurship and climate entrepreneurship. Here are some more details about these solutions that we have developed with partners for the Lake Chad Basin region. And this is the other one was the satellite-based internet access, because it's a huge problem for people to be part of global community if they don't have access to the internet, and often access to the internet is also very expensive. And there's also these huge intellectual resources that are out there. Without access to the internet, people from Lake Chad cannot tap into. And we have presented in more detail these solutions in the N'Djamena conference end of April this year. So the other one is youth sustainable energy entrepreneurship. We have had meetings with UNIDO, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, on productive work for youth, because the global community has agreed in the Paris Agreement that we will go 100% renewable by 2050. And in this energy transition, there is so much economic potential. Really, it's for wealth generation, for job generation, better healthier cities and everything. And if we bring in this army of young, unemployed, but often also well-educated people to help their local communities and the neighborhoods to make the energy transition and have renewable energy sources, then that's a huge potential. And part of some of these solutions, which are similar approaches like Martin will present, we are bringing also to Lake Chad. One of the key idea is that there are these big resource spots, like for instance the Giving Pledge. Billionaires' families from around the world, there are now already around 200 billionaires' families. They have pledged to give back to society half of their wealth before they die. They have a combined wealth of $1 trillion, and so at least $500 billion are in the air and waiting to be channeled to meaningful and impactful local action. And Lake Chad Basin region is one of the most suffering area there, is certainly deserving to be also beneficiary of this, but there's nothing flowing there. No resources are getting there, and there's also funding from Green Climate Fund. There will be $100 billion per year for climate action in developing countries from the year 2020 onwards, and there will be huge funds from carbon tax revenue funds in the coming years. And we need to set up the institutional and technological infrastructure which will allow the resource flows to go to public good generating projects in places like Lake Chad. And for this to function, we have seen that we need enabling technologies, and blockchain technology is one of the key technologies which we see as enabler and key element of the technological infrastructure for these resource flows to help safeguard monitoring, reporting, verification, evaluation, finance flows, and accountability. And because we have understood this importance of this technology for multi-stakeholder engagement in climate action, we have been also partners of the Climate Chain Coalition. We are a founding partner, and we will hear about more later from Tom Baumann, and how this kind of structure can also help to develop the global systems which will increase the resource flows to climate entrepreneurs all around the world. And here we have elaborated in more detail and presented it at several UN conferences in the UN FCCC process, at COP23, also COP24, and also at the Vienna Energy Forum. And next steps are that we will have a climate philanthropy meeting on the 22nd of September here in New York in the context of the Secretary General Climate Summit at the 866 UN Plaza, which is a new co-working space and event space and art space managed and owned by Blue Planet Alliance, represented today by our colleague Jerica. And at the same place, we will also have a Climate Chain Coalition event on blockchain technology for climate action management, climate finance innovation, and climate entrepreneurship on the 24th of September. We will work with our partners Al-Najad and APCD on these pilot projects implementation, and we are also starting conversations with the government of South Africa and the city of Durban to work on these pilot projects also there. And we hope that this kind of topics will also continue to have the attention of the Nigerian mission and the incoming president of the General Assembly, that we can help to find for the UN the position and support for these topics. And with this, I'm finishing, and I'm saying gloria yours, and there is hope, is our message.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pulser. Just for clarity, because as we kind of continue to walk through these presentations, we realize that this is actually all of what we'll speak about today is really emerging technologies. And so I do want to stop in between these presentations just for a moment to see if there are any clarifying questions. Anyone like to ask something just for clarification at this point? Yes, here. Yes, you're on. Okay. If you start speaking, they'll adjust the volume. Okay.
My name is Hyunra. I'm with BOT Solutions. We work on providing integrated water and energy solutions to communities. I'm curious to know, when you talk about these blockchain and advanced solutions, what is the energy situation in Lake Chad? Like, do they have stable electricity infrastructure that they can't even dream of this right now? And if not, what is the plan for you to actually get there that you can actually implement that plan that you're just talking about?
Okay, very quickly. So the energy situation is that it's the majority of the energy supply is based on fossil energy and diesel aggregates, because there are very many breakdowns in the power supply. When I've been there, even at a luxury hotel there in the Hilton, we've had 20 power shutdowns per day. And the point is that these energy solutions, the standard grids, and so this is something where national governments and the standard players are playing a role. But the new generation and the new opportunity that is now with these photovoltaics and wind and different other renewable energy technologies is that local communities, individual families, companies can create their solutions and which can grow into a systemic solution at a certain point. And by empowering these local and non-state actors, we overcome also these governance failures that are there with these weak structures which are not able to provide the necessary energy services and others there. But you will hear also from Martin in more detail how such solutions look like, also which are bottom-up.
May I also interpret the question and give a clarification? Was your question about the energy consumption of blockchain and whether they actually have...
In Lake Chad, the situation.
Right, but was it related to for example, the energy consumption of some blockchain protocols?
No.
No.
It was not.
Okay. No, my question's about the current energy infrastructure condition, because the things that you're talking about right now would require that they have stable internet connection and stable electricity infrastructure, which I am not sure they have right now. And when you talk about energy transition, that's also assuming that you actually have a network, an infrastructure that is functional, that is powered by fossil fuel, whatever that you assume, or whatever that is, into PV or renewable solutions. What I am not understanding is there even such infrastructure existing right now that we can dream this big and this advanced? If not, then what is your first step plan to make sure that you actually have enough things moving in the ground that you can dream up to step up and do blockchain and all these things? Because if you don't have the basic infrastructure, you cannot do anything. If you don't have internet, how can you think about blockchain? If you don't have electricity, how can you think about internet? And so on. So that's my question. Thank you.
So I'll take this one. It's absolutely a fabulous question, and it goes really to the comments around, you know, what need to be done first, second, third, right? What's the plan to our esteemed audience member earlier who keeps asking what's the plan. But I also, when Amjad Umar joins us, and Amjad, please feel free to come and join us now if you would like. There are some ways to use very simple levels of technologies. And Amjad can certainly talk about some ways that he's been able to do that in just using very simple cell phone technology. So, yeah. Amjad, we're going to wait for you to answer that question until you join us, okay? Yes, we'll go on to our next presentation. So, I'd like to introduce Ms. Catherine Foster, who is the CIO of the Sustainable Digital Finance Alliance. And this is a partnership between the UN Environment Program and Ant Financial Services Group, which aims to harness emerging technologies for sustainable finance. As a former Canadian diplomat, Catherine specialized in climate and human security for nearly a decade before she began collaborating on initiatives at the nexus of innovation, policy, and sustainable development. Her presentation will focus on adapting the ant forest citizen engagement model for Central Africa. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. Hopefully a little bit more than that as well. And I wanted to come back to the question because to me, I always start as a scientist, accidental diplomat, and you know, when I think 20 years ago, I was here as a junior diplomat giving my first presentation, and human security actually at that point was the framing of this type of situation. It was conflict prevention, war-affected children, the Kimberley process, climate change. We were discussing all of these issues from that perspective. It was problematic, but it was really integrative. That is the sort of frame of reference I take forward into all the work that I've done since. And the innovation building I did in Europe was actually through the EU's Climate Kick, which is the largest public-private partnership on clean technology and even soft, low technology in the world. And we scaled up over 1,000 startups focusing on different areas with climate impact mitigation and adaptation, as well as over 300 partnerships with cross-sectoral actors. And again, that's a frame of reference I bring forward into what I'm doing now with ANT and the Sustainable Digital Finance Alliance, also known as the Green Digital Finance Alliance. So I've basically wanted to talk here about that cross-sectoral and cross-stakeholder approach and global action for local resources as well. And the Green Digital Alliance was actually the first title. It's gone through a few iterations, and we'll be returning to that. But it was launched at the World Economic Forum in 2017 and co-founded by ANT and the UN Environment. So the Alliance actually is a global partnership. It brings together the digital finance business stakeholders to accelerate fintech innovations that address global environmental challenges. So largely the green SDGs, and for me, one of the most important ones, SDG 17 partnerships and collaboration. And so we focus on scaling innovation, collaboration, and increasing awareness to ensure that fintech-powered systems of the future are aligned with sustainable development, because all of this innovation cannot happen unless the finances are there and actually channeled into scaling those up. And right now that's not happening to the degree it needs to. And I wanted to first just introduce the board to you, our advisors and board. The Alliance's core members include financial institutions. They're committed to using digital technology to advance green finance, in lending, in investment and insurance. And we have diverse allies as well from across the environmental and financial spheres. We're partnering with these catalytic large-scale initiatives and building strong foundations for change, which is very broad statements. But in fact, we're right now only a team of 1.5 persons. And but we do have this incredibly dynamic board supporting us and helping us build this out. And our purpose is essentially to build a gap between industries so that we can work together and scale up solutions. And we basically have three focus areas or outcome areas. The overall objective is to leverage digital technologies and innovations to enhance financing by shaping international cooperation, promoting national ecosystems, and igniting market action. And we do this through three outcome areas, and these are very interrelated, so they're not stuck in these silos. We have content, thought leadership, the scaling of green bonds, flagship reports, and we have community building clusters of fintech hubs as part of a global network. We're developing a guide to map out green fintechs, and we're also promoting sustainable digital finance practices. We've just in the last few weeks actually started those hubs. So we have 3 hubs now existing: Ghana, Zurich in Holland, and we're examining others in sort of regional perspectives, and the guide is ongoing. We're actually experimenting and scaling to support the country-level action to pilot innovative approaches and to actually shift the capital markets for citizen investing. We're publishing all these results as well. And the adaptation of ant forest, I'll get into that a bit as well, is to actually focus on behavioral change triggers for deforestation and biodiversity and related issues. And I'll come back to that because I think it's important to demonstrate how that can happen. Right now, ant forest is largely viewed in Asia, in China, but we're already starting to scale that up, and we're looking at piloting and expanding that into the African context. So these are some of the publications we've done, some of the reports. We're working with the special representative, the task force, digitizing green bonds with HSBC. We'll be launching that here in New York on 24th of September, and this will also be related included in the task force. So again, the idea is we need to de-risk capital market instruments in order to get better ratings, and even in fragile and at-risk countries, so that we can scale up these innovations. And we could consider a partnership to launch, for example, a Chad Digital Finance Solution Lab to experiment with new instruments in a very cost-efficient way and in a very demonstrator way. And this is what I wanted to come back to that question, because in order for any of these innovations to scale up, and I have actually built out a few pilots on carbon markets, on fuel transparency with some of the other organizations I've built out, and the key to those successes was about a demonstrator approach, defining the problem with the problem holders and the stakeholders along the value chain, and building up the solutions in very small, lean ways, and then scaling with the stakeholders going forward. And that's actually how we've managed to build up some of the pilots in my previous work and now with SDFA. So this is ant forest, and I would love to give you a little overview about ant forest. Because we are exploring whether and how to adapt the behavioral triggers on this platform in other areas. We've actually just launched in collaboration G-Wallet in the Philippines, which is very similar to this. It's inspired by Ant Forest and actually supported by them. And Ant Forest basically is a fintech app that has mobilized 500 million people to act on deforestation and climate change in planting over 100 million trees in a very sound way. So it's very environmentally sound as well. And this allows people to connect to the problem of deforestation. We could do it for the Central African rainforest, for example, is one of the areas we're looking at, to actually action solutions. And that could work with other solutions as well. And so there is a video. I hope this link works.
How can fintech solutions save the Congo Basin rainforest?
Oh, this is not the right one,
In the
but
fight against climate
it's a
change,
teaser.
humans do not stand alone. Trees are our most valuable allies. And yet we cut them down. When trees fall, they release the carbon they have captured into the atmosphere,
This needs editing.
further warming our planet. The Congo Basin rainforest is the second largest rainforest in the world. It is the fourth largest carbon reservoir. People rely on it for food, fresh water, shelter, and medicine. It is the home of critically endangered animals, such as forest elephants, gorillas, and bonobos. By 2100, the Congo Basin rainforest could be gone. At the root of the problem is a broken incentive structure. There are currently no incentives to keep the trees in the ground, and the Congo Basin rainforest is not protected by the Paris Agreement. Deforestation is happening at an alarming scale due to small-scale farming and illegal logging. It is a global challenge. The illegally logged timber is exported to Europe, the US, and China. The question is, could new technology help us protect and restore the nature that we all rely on? Technologies such as blockchain, artificial intelligence, and the Internet of Things have already successfully disrupted markets. We ask, how can we apply fintech solutions to innovate our investments in nature and ultimately save the Congo Basin rainforest.
So that is just a teaser of one of the areas that we're looking into. And this is being actually piloted in terms of scoping the capacity of users in China to use their apps to actually action this change. So we're trying a couple of iterations of this to see to actually collect data about that to see what the viability is. But you see, this type of approach is what we're talking about in any region that has this type of nexus approach, nexus issues with multiple stakeholders, multiple issues that are interrelated. So this is the type of innovation I'm happy to discuss, happy to be here for, and I look forward to exploring ways that we can work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. We're going to move on to our next, to our next presenter, and then we will be connecting by web to our presenter after that. So let's just go ahead and move forward, and let me introduce Dr. Martin Weinstein. And he is an interesting title. He is an innovator in residence at the Tsai Center for Innovative Thinking at Yale. And there he leads the development of the Yale Open Innovation Lab. He is also a research associate at the Yale Department of Electrical Engineering and a research affiliate at the Digital Currency Initiative of the MIT Media Lab. Martin's presentation will focus on digital currency initiatives, unlocking global financial resources for SDG action with digital currencies, blockchain technologies. Martin.
Thank you very much, Deborah, and thanks a lot for inviting me here. It's an honor and pleasure to be here, particularly to share our work and explore the intersection with the Lake Chad region. I'll start by framing a bit of the type of work that we do and why I thought it was quite relevant to some of the challenges at hand. The Open Lab is really about open innovation in terms of open source technology for digital public goods, and we try to operate in very big picture systemic challenges and the intersection of emerging technology, but recognizing that one of the most important technologies that we might have is radical collaboration among all stakeholders. And so we really look as technologies as being able to enable new forms of multi-stakeholder partnership. Our focus at the moment is around the climate and energy transition, and it's really in the intersection of those three key pieces that produces the broth for the incubated projects to come out that often take the form of peer-to-peer open source digital platforms. Within emerging technologies, we focus a lot on blockchain, but not exclusively, so a lot of Internet of Things and augmented and virtual reality. And so with that concept, we have a couple of projects that I thought was quite relevant to this, because if we look at the issue at hand, and most of our work tries to take a systems thinking approach. So if we look at primarily some of the systems dynamics of the region, the climate fragility is just part of increasing the exposure to climate impact. And when looking at some of the key things about climate action, really the key aspect is around adaptation and building resilience in the region to stop that negative positive feedback loop. But to be able to deliver that, we at least have to think about the mobilization of financial resources and technological transfers to the region, but also to mobilize back very clear climate accounting of how those resources are being deployed and model know-how for replication. So with that framing, and I would add a third one, which is the global relationship with that. So looking at it across borders, with that general framing, I thought of two projects that we're incubating that are quite relevant for that. And the first one relates go back to financial technologies on a project that uses and leverages blockchain for contractual automation in the project finance phase of distributed infrastructure, and the role of community ownership on that. And I'll share a bit about that project. And the second one is the role that also accounting technologies like blockchain and Internet of Things can help in automating, reducing costs of climate accounting at the whole spectrum. And I'll show a bit of how we take the scope of the whole spectrum. And I looked at the Adelphi report that Luke has presented today, and I think there's a couple of key aspects around 10 points, entry points into the region, and I thought that some of the things that we were working on specifically addressed that, so I was happy to see the relevance there. So starting with the first one, this first project around financial technology for deploying clean energy, which is what really started, actually started after the Irma and Maria hurricanes hit the Puerto Rico electricity system, which really showed how climate impacts exposes vulnerability of the current infrastructure, and that not only that exposes multiple fragility in the resilience of the area. So we've been working since over a year now in Puerto Rico, but we mostly wanted to see how to rebuild the energy infrastructure with a large role of community ownership. And so whilst we started by looking at the use of technology to drive some of the intricacies of a more transactive and community-owned microgrid, we realized that the key bottleneck is how do we finance that infrastructure in the first place? So going back to the question is, how do we start by financing the energy infrastructure to begin with? So one of the key hypotheses we had was, well, we can leverage Internet of Things data coming in from the service that the infrastructure provides. In case of distributed solar, that's basically the kilowatt hours that the photovoltaics generates, and using smart contracts, basically digital if-then statements, to automate the process of payments, so price per kilowatt hour, automate the generation of the we call here in the United States renewable energy certificates, any form of attestation of the green attribute of that infrastructure being generated. But third, and often complicated, is as you're making payments on that infrastructure, you're taking ownership of it. And so we particularly looked at pay-to-own models. So we did our first proof of concept of this use of that technology, and after that we said, well, it works, and it doesn't, whilst you obviously need internet for Internet of Things to work, there are very basic telecommunication systems to be able to drive a system like that, because the amount of data packages are quite basic, so they could be done with radio frequencies or even 3G technology or LTE. So any hotspot could deliver that, and actually our proof of concept was done on a hotspot. So we ended up basically building a platform to create all the requirements, all the tools to facilitate the connection between investors, local community, and all the chain of stakeholders in the process, as well as a marketplace for projects. So we really focused on financing infrastructure through project finance. And this is what the pilot currently looks like. It really has three key stakeholders: the investors, we look at any form of, let's say, crowd investment profile of investors, some requiring more concessionary capital and some with more market-driven capital, but really a fused capital stack in the process. All the developers, so local energy entrepreneurs in Puerto Rico are particularly activated with that, and the receivers, let's say the off-takers of the service. And this is kind of like the array of all the different processes that we had to build within the platform to be able to almost seamlessly integrate or attempt to seamlessly integrate all those processes to try to reduce the cost. And one of the key things that was a driver of this is that one of the key pieces of what drove a large uptake of solar electricity in the United States is the drive of third-party ownership of solar through power purchase agreements. Now, these normally require a large legal upfront capital cost to projects. What we were after is how do we leverage technology to reduce the legal capital cost per project, and how to drive down to specific regions that are under climate impact. And there's a lot that I can talk about, the technological stack, but diving into the blockchain piece, which is not the only one. There's obviously the hardware, the Internet of Things, the database, and the financial and banking infrastructure. A key part of what sits in that is the smart contract. We built a system so that it can uptake a library of contracts, because there's many ways of financing a project, and in particularly if it's got to be focused towards community ownership. So one of the things that we looked at is the pay-to-own model, where a third-party investor finances directly the project, similar as one you would see in a Kickstarter. And the project itself is a digital entity that automatically disperses the funds to the developers for the installation, checks where the installation was done, and also collects payments from the end user. And as those payments progress, the ownership of that system changes from the hands of the investors to the hands of the end users. So we moved past Puerto Rico and started working with Rwanda. This is part of a MOU collaboration that Yale University has with the Rwandan government, particularly on helping them reach some of their ambitious goals of energy access, because over 40% of the country doesn't have access to electricity. And for this, as opposed to looking at financial on the previous work in Puerto Rico, we were mostly looking at municipal bonds as the financial instrument. So we have to look at the flow of money from investors, but also securities. So with this project, we're particularly interested on how to reduce the cost of cross-border investments, cross-border movements of securities, as well as using modern financial instruments for projects like this, like climate bonds. And the reduction of the cost of the green attestations behind a climate bond. And that's a bit of what we've been working on since this summer, actually. We also focus in starting with schools, and we are particularly looking at a couple of schools, but one of the key parts of financing infrastructure is not just energy, is how do we then finance the internet, a more robust internet infrastructure for these schools. So with that in mind, and probably this kind of shows the role that blockchain has, all the actors that are in the top level form part of some international investors, local investors, the role of the project as primarily an escrow account with built-in functionalities, the developers and the receivers with mobile money infrastructure. And really what the platform does is facilitate the movement of all those payments in a low-cost way. I don't have that much time, but I do want to talk a bit about the role that some of the digital ledger technologies can have on climate accounting. And in our approach to this, first, again, takes that we can only achieve this through radical collaborations, to agreeing general protocols on how accounting is done. In many ways, the internet as a technology is quite a boring technology. It's a fundamental protocol. But see, these are some of the sexy things that lie ahead, is some of these boring protocols, but enable us to be in the same leveling playing field. And so we particularly look at how can this help through enforce and drive forward the Paris Agreement, with blockchain not having a replacement of all the agreements, really is just a layer that seeps into that. And that layer, again, takes a form of Internet of Things to be able to attest what's happening on the ground, oracles, which are ways of third-party verifying an action and then inbuilt it into a smart contract. And we really think about this as the role of technologies that are part of a digital public goods realm. So our scope really tries to cover the whole process, from understanding, so being able to digitize the assessment of the ecosystem state, starting at the planetary level. And actually what drove this project is, if we think about the remaining carbon budget, which can be deployed in the next 10, 15 years, given by a 1.5 degree target, we basically have a huge accounting problem. And so blockchain as an accounting technology was like, can we help the world keep track of our single carbon budget using a single ledger? But it moves beyond that. So I'm going to zoom into the bottom part, and I'm going to skip the purple and blue, which basically, purple talks about network climate markets and blue about climate finance. The bottom part really focuses on the actors and the policy that connects them, nation states, subnational actors, non-state actors as huge climate champions, and the agreements and the Paris Agreement being a central part of that, as well as the process of monitoring, reporting, and verifying any climate action, and the technologies to be able to drive the reduction of the cost of testing and doing that MRV process, whether that be emissions, mitigation, and adaptation. But like I said at the beginning, for the Lake Chad region, the key part at hand is adaptation. Mitigation is a key source for economic development, and we frame it as such. But looking at adaptation within our interconnected sort of climate accounting vision, we could see that in terms of actors, we're looking at states, the four countries around it, subnational actors, whether it be a village or a city, or any form of establishment there that has some form of sub-governmental organization, as well as, like Miro said before, the role of non-state actors, companies, etc. And focusing on adaptation with mitigation as a source of economic development, energy, internet, some of the things that I was talking about before can drive a lot of that into the region. So just to give you an overview of what we're doing around these technologies for global climate accounting, cross-reference all those layers, Earth system layer accounting, all the world system registries, climate action certification and markets and finance, across that technological stack, blockchain and a platform being able to provide some basic protocols and web services there, to map out all the different data processes and data flows. I'm obviously not going to go into these in detail, but just to talk a bit about how this requires being able to weave the whole record-keeping system together. And just as a final example of a proof of concept and the role of non-state actors, one of the projects that we're doing here in Connecticut is working with a Spanish company, Iberdrola, subsidiary here in the United States called Avangrid, on how to create nested climate accounting. And by that, I'm going to show a slide to show that. So this would be the climate pledges of this company or any organization. And when we talk about blockchain in this project, it's not just about accounting, really is about accountability. So if we have a pledge, how is keeping track and how do we use digital technologies to be able to keep the accountability towards that track at a low cost? But just looking at, I'm going to go back one slide. This is a specific project that the company has here in New England, which is a fuel cell that generates renewable energy certificates. But what we're looking at is our protocols for this private company and its certified climate actions to be accounted within the subnational actor of Connecticut, which has its own climate action pledges, and that ideally could automatically account within United States national determined contribution and automatically help the accounting at the UN or global level. This is quite relevant because if the United States steps out of the Paris Agreement, it's really up to subnational and non-state actors to do climate accounting, and that climate accounting is quite straightforward and simple for it to be aggregated at the global planetary level. And with that, I'll leave you, and thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. All right, I think that Tom Bauman should be standing by next. So let's see if we can go ahead and connect to him. And as we're doing that, before he comes on, or as he comes on, again, I just want to encourage you to think about this as sort of a highway of connections, right? And you know how many of sort of the priority areas of education, for instance, agriculture. So much right now is deliverable in terms of either delivering education or recording and measuring and verifying for the agricultural or even the fishing industry through these systems. And they're happening. You know, it's not pie in the sky. So it's a matter of really thinking in terms of where are those entry points into the Lake Chad Basin area, We may not be at these incredibly high levels of implementation, but there is a place to start. And if we can get the actors together, you know, I like, we talk about supply chains a lot in the private sector, but this idea of chain of stakeholders is even more inclusive, right? And so how do we get that chain of stakeholders to the point where we can actually move them to scale and to speed? So
I liked your question on whether there was any clarifying questions. So if I did use a bit of extra jargon, if there is any clarifying question, maybe that would be a good time to address.
Anyone want to venture into the blockchain set of questions at this point? And if Martin did have any points of confusion, especially for you. No? No? Yes, please.
John German, People to People International. Yeah, I have I'm helping someone else on a blockchain project for e-waste. To trace traceability, lower cost, and also to flow the incentives back up the reverse supply chain. But the question I want to ask here is one I asked this morning. Is anybody relating anything they're doing to impact bonds or any of the other names by which they're known? And if so, can we put together a community of practice around that so that we can get the benefit of everybody's learning on it? Thank you.
So you started by talking about e-waste and a blockchain, but I missed, I think, a part in between about the question on the connection between e-waste, and could you reframe that maybe again?
Oh, it may turn out that there will be a connection there because on impact bonds, one of the key aspects is verifying that which was to be accomplished has actually been accomplished. And of course, blockchain is one of the leading tools for verifying things. So I expect that there will be a connection there, but it's not a necessary one.
Sure.
So I don't want to saddle either one of them with the other one.
Right.
All right, thank you. So do we have Mr. Bauman on?
Not yet.
Online, not yet?
Working.
Is it working on it? All right. Well, I'll go ahead and give a bit of an introduction. So when he comes on, we can get right to his presentation. And so Mr. Bauman basically is the founder and co-chair of the Climate Change Coalition, which is it's an open multi-stakeholder global network of about 160 organizations now in 40 countries. And its mission is really to support collaboration amongst its members and stakeholders. Full disclosure, I'm a member of the CCC. Tom also co-founded 2 digital startups for sustainability, and you may be familiar. So that is Expansive in 2016 as a digital commodities platform, and Adaptation Ledger in 2018. And so if we can get Tom on board,
yes,
hopefully,
working.
yes, it's working, okay. He will discuss climate entrepreneurship.
Okay. No, yet not listening.
All right, all right. Hello, Tom. I'm hoping you can hear us, and I will turn over the floor to you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone from Ottawa, Canada. Am I coming through clearly?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Thanks to the organizers for enabling my participation via the internet, which of course makes me feel better in reducing GHG emissions. I've been able to watch the last 2 sessions, and it's very interesting. And of course, I'm also happy to be part of this expert panel. Let me start by introducing the Climate Change Coalition. It's an open global initiative founded in December 2017, and I co-chair it with the UN Climate Change Secretariat, specifically Masamba Tioe. We have about 170 organizations as members across different sectors like forestry, communities, renewable energy, supply chains, and many more. and also many different types of stakeholder groups. So it's truly a multi-stakeholder global network, universities and blockchain startups of all different sizes, and many other groups as well. In over 40 countries, including 2 members that are in Nigeria and at least one in the Lake Chad Basin area. We have an online searchable map of members, so you can search and get the contact information and learn about the members easily on our website. The coalition's mission is to support the collaboration of the members with their stakeholders so that as they advance their blockchain related and other digital tools as well, solutions for the purposes of helping to mobilize this climate finance into scaling climate actions and to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement. As the previous speakers noted, we work extensively with non-state actors, whether it's solution providers using digital tools for climate actions like smart agriculture, or indeed blockchain for renewable energy, but also the entire ecosystem across climate services, whether that's climate data, monitoring and evaluation, MRV, climate finance, and so on. And so I want to just quickly highlight one example of one of our members related to today's topic on resilience in the Lake Chad area, and that is Adaptation Ledger, which is targeting adaptation finance, which I think everyone knows is far too little required for the levels of resilience that we need to achieve. And just to put that into a few numbers, climate finance is estimated around 440 billion or so, and of that, only about 20 billion is related to adaptation. And if you break down that adaptation, which is only 5% of climate finance, which is far from the 50-50 split that is an overall goal, of the adaptation finance, most of it, somewhere between 80 and 90%, goes towards disaster response, not resilience building, which is roughly 10-15%. So clearly a challenge to increase adaptation finance into resilience by a factor of at least 100 or between now and 2030. And to achieve that goal, Adaptation Ledger is developing a multi-stakeholder scalable platform that brings together the use of these digital tools, but also governance innovation in how adaptation standards and methods are applied across the diversity of adaptation activities. And indeed, some work is already happening in Rwanda, and to furthermore utilize new financial instruments such as the Vulnerability Reduction Credit, or VRC. And so that pilot actually is going to be shared, presented next month during Climate Week in New York. And as Miroslav mentioned before, he leads the outreach and events for the coalition, numerous events. And at this upcoming event in New York, we'll be presenting a number of pilots. Some of the meetings will be open to the public, so we encourage you, if you're interested, to learn more and to ask questions to some of these innovators directly, to contact us and join our events on September 24th. But we also support other knowledge sharing. In fact, looking at the panel, I see all of them are Climate Change Coalition members. And recently, Catherine Foster and I collaborated with World Bank on a couple of reports on how blockchain can support innovations in climate markets going forward. And so for this upcoming meeting or meetings and events in and New York, as I mentioned, we have over 170 organizations and hundreds of members there. 2 of them are from Nigeria. And so with this global network that are sharing lessons learned across so many different types of pilots and the different research, the coalition with their presence and activities, I think, could be very helpful to these types of discussions and plans to implement digital pilots or support capacity building related to the Lake Chad projects that have been discussed today. So again, thanks to the organizers for allowing me to participate remotely. And I know we're overdue, so I'll leave it there and hand it back to the moderator, Deborah.
Thank you so much, Tom. Yes, excellent. I wish Tom had been able to sort of stay with us for some questions, because if you do participate in Climate Week and you have a chance to go to some of Tom's sessions, ask him how basically the international development banks are thinking about the use of these technologies, and I think again this will really show you that it's not an impossibility to move some of these technologies to some of the most remote and most vulnerable areas, especially when you think about the fact that just all the organizations that are available and focused, not only from this panel here, but everyone we spoke to today. Imagine if we actually could get that, that chain of stakeholders to start to work on a plan, right?
May I add a point to the...
Yes, please.
I would just like to say a great thank you to the team of the broadcast and conference support section of the UN Secretariat here. Susanna Espinosa and Jonathan, they have worked very hard to make this video conference possible, and a great hand of applause for them as well.
Perfect, thank you. Dr. Umar, would you like to join us for our panel discussions, please? And while he's coming up to join us, so Dr. Amjad Umar is professor and director of ICT at Harrisburg University of Science and Technology. And he's also an adjunct professor of systems and telecom engineering at the University of Pennsylvania. And he's the founder and CEO of NGE Solutions, which specializes in next generation enterprises.
Your name, please.
And sort of last but not least, and I probably could go on even further, but I'll just give you this last piece. He is chief architect of the United Nations Global Alliance for ICT Development Enabler Project. So welcome, Judd. Thank you for joining us for this panel discussion. So first and foremost, I'd like to start with any questions from the audience, and then I think we'll have some dialogue amongst the panelists in between. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Dr. Wale Idris Ajibade, African Views. Remarkable panelists, thank you very much for magnificent details. My question is, so while all these technologies exist, of what could be done, etc., what exactly is the end product? What is the vision on the table? Because I believe that the ADB perhaps has some funds available to support this, maybe the World Bank, etc., and also to put in mind that the Lake Chad is the basin is a really large region we're talking about. It's not only for the neighboring countries, but really a resource for the world, a World Heritage Site. So this means that funding shouldn't be a problem if the vision is clear, and it would be good to really share the vision of what you see afterwards. Please, thank you.
Catherine, please.
I don't want to be too provocative here, but I think that this is part of the issue, is the way that we're framing the question of what is your solution? And the way that we're framing that, when I was at the World Bank, the biggest innovation that came out of the blockchain carbon markets formulation and pilot was the fact that the different entities within the World Bank actually had to stop and say, we need to rethink how we're doing procurement and our grant making. And I think that's a big part of this, and being able to define solutions in an iterative way, and that means bringing in the stakeholders. And I'm thinking of the solar, how many solar solutions were pitched in 2017? So many, and they were off-grid, on-grid, they had protocol burns, all of this different capacities, but the incentives were misaligned because they were in competition with each other rather than building together. So to me, the vision is having that type of mechanism for real collaboration to actually bring what we set up through our market systems and through our procurement systems as competitors, to bring them together and say, okay, actually, let's try to find different ways of funding this. So I would put the question back.
Yes, please.
If I may add also our vision for the Lake Chad Basin. So first, we need to bring some of these essential technologies for implementation of the SDGs, be it sustainable energy for all, access to water, quality education through e-learning and these kind of things, that we bring it in pilot projects there, and that we create a business model that is replicable and economically viable, because it is also nurtured by global resources, global philanthropy resources, global international development finance resources, carbon tax revenue funds, and the local users. And that at the end we have an ecosystem. It's going to go beyond projects, beyond programs, but to have an ecosystem where a young person that is entrepreneurial or a mayor, so if they want to implement these kind of technologies, these economically viable technologies, they will get from the ecosystem all the necessary knowledge, technology, finance, so that they can implement it, and that they will have a livelihood in the future. And this would also avoid them aiming for the north, even if they have the danger of drowning there, because they will have a future at the place where they live. And so it's an ecosystem that we are envisioning, not some projects, but an ecosystem with millions of projects and people involved.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to just bring Amjad in here because, Amjad, you have a number of ICT hubs positioned around the globe already. And so when you heard this panel today, and of course you're intimately involved in much of the work that's going on across this panel, what are your thoughts about how we can move this forward?
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you, Ms. Deborah Johnson. You are my friend, but thank you for putting me on the spot right away. So at least you gave me a chance to sit down. That's good. So anyway, I want to start from a slightly different point of view, and I will try to answer the question also about the overall vision as we go along. When I came in this morning, I knew, I have to admit, very little about Lake Chad Basin issues. I had read some of the documents that I will call her Deborah because she is a good friend. Deborah had sent me, and I felt reasonably good that I know something about it, but beyond that, I did not know much. So the session today has been enlightening. It has been very rich in content. A lot of information has been shared. It ranges anywhere from just general information items to the challenges, to the solutions, to different type of system modeling approaches, to different tool sets, and the technologies, the range of technologies like blockchains and many others. So what I was thinking before even Deborah asked me to come here was that it would be very nice to synthesize all that knowledge, not the knowledge that's available outside, but just the knowledge that was shared today, into a systematic approach that could be used for the purpose of planning. The whole idea is that there is tremendous amount of knowledge being thrown over the walls all the time. People are more confused, and they're actually less prepared to make decisions now than they were a year ago, because a tremendous body of knowledge has been accumulated, since that last year. So my area of research and my area of work, thank you very much, Dr. Achoba, for mentioning that you are a professor, and what do professors know about planning? So I am the oddball. My area of specialization, I'm a professor, but my area of specialization is planning, especially computer-aided planning. So I just want to share with you some of the ideas that I have in my mind. None of them are polished, so please don't pick on me too much, because I just have these handwritten notes. I don't have beautiful charts and diagrams or anything like that to support. So allow me to just rattle through a few of the things that are coming to my mind. The first thing is that there is a need for quote-unquote information hub that will just capture the essence of the discussion that we have had today. All the problems, all the things that have been discussed. That does not include anything that's outside yet, okay? But this particular information hub could also invite then other people to post the problems, post what they know, what the solutions are, what solutions are working in what situation. So this kind of an information hub could become a very active spot for just collecting the information. And by itself, what it would do is, of course, it will help several people to get some answers. But in addition to that, it is a very good tool for awareness. Many people do not know that much about Lake Chad problems. I was very surprised to know today, to learn that this problem has been with us for 10 years. I'm ashamed of myself that I did not know that. But I'm sure many, many other people also do not know this. So the fact that if there is a information hub that is devoted to Lake Chad Basin problems and the solution approaches, and have kind of topic-based discussions and do a little bit of matchmaking if you have this kind of a problem, here is a possible solution for you, or things of that nature, very simple kind of things. That would be a very good step forward. But it doesn't stop there. In addition to the hub, there was excellent discussion today about the concepts of modeling, different type of models, very complex models that have been built to show the interrelationship and interdependencies between water and healthcare and many other issues. So there should be another system that just is focused on modeling, almost a layer of services that are focused on modeling different type of scenarios. They could go from very simple type of models to fairly complicated models that could require modeling, simulation, even gamification. And by the way, this layer does not have to be, just a standalone layer. It should provide value itself, but it should be sitting on top of the information hub. One of the major problems nowadays is that there are too many point solutions being thrown over the wall. So there are so many solutions that you don't know what to do. So this idea that I have been working on is that you have a basic repository of knowledge. This would be information hub in our case. And there will be the set of the tools, the models that are being built. They will use those information sources that are already available on this hub, plus anything else that is available. So that kind of ties the things together. And the third layer on top of it would be a layer that would actually focus on decision support tools. That if you are in a situation, number one, in country A, what would you do? A healthcare solution in Belgium is very different than a healthcare solution in Nigeria, in the rural area in Nigeria. So the locations information has to be in it, the topic information has to be in it, and there has to be a very simple mechanism where you can make some decisions on which, what to do where. And then, of course, then you can build a kind of a very nice planning system on top of it that, depending upon the situation, it could invoke just the information hub just to fetch the information and display it, or invoke a model that is needed, or invoke actually another decision support tool. So this becomes then a very interesting type of a platform for decision making, and this should be, let's say, focused just on Lake Chad Basin. But I mean, I am guilty of actually, and Deborah knows it, that I have built a system like that right now that is already operating, but basically for rapid implementation of SDGs, it has a basic core knowledge base and the system modeling tools around it, and decision support and a planning framework. It's a relatively simple country-style type of a tool, and we built it very simple, with very simple type of technologies, because the people who are using it, they do not have very sophisticated internet and broadband services and things of that nature. So anyway, that's just, I just wanted to mention that these are like 3 to 4 basic ingredients, but please don't think of them as standalone. Each one of them does provide some value and service, but then they also, when they're combined together, that becomes a very powerful proposition for us to discuss.
Thank you.
End of story.
Thank you, Amjad. So for me, as Amjad said, I'm a friend, so I think there might be some hints here of some work coming my way. So Catherine, I think you have a follow-up, build on.
Absolutely. I think, I mean, this is a fantastic foundation to build upon, and what I would like to propose, if I did have a vision, it would be to have a sort of demonstrator lab approach to this, where you not only harness the information and the actors, the problem holders, but you can then bring in funding in small packages, basically, to demonstrate across some of the SDGs or some of the challenge-based approaches for actual pilots. And the difference between a demonstrator and a pilot is that a pilot is proving a technology. A demonstrator is proving a concept and proving the right actors are there at the table, and that you're actually targeting the legacy system, the legacy issues, as well as the reality of the data, the reality of the infrastructure that is there in place. Because there is no sense in bringing in pilots from Europe to that context if that infrastructure isn't in place. So a demonstrator lab that is iterative, that you prove the concept, and then you build up with actors as well as the technical and physical infrastructure.
Thank you, Catherine. All right, so we have about 10 minutes for any questions and or comments. As I said, we do want to hear from you. Yes, please.
Merci, cher panel.
Thank you, dear members of the panel. I'm delighted to be among you because, first of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Abid Gadimi. I'm an advisor at the permanent mission of the Republic of Chad to the United Nations. We were amazed and dazzled by the various presentations that we heard today. And, you know, if the Lake Chad was an ill person, it would be already cured at this time with all these great doctors around here. So I have a short and quick question, if I may ask, because in the various presentations and the various talks, you know, we mentioned the carbon tax a lot. We talked about the Green Fund. I heard about me, based on my little experience, I know that the Green Fund, you know, is very difficult to access. There's a whole system. Did some measure been taken to make that accessible? And at which level will the fund, you know, collect some funds to feed itself?
Do we have anyone who's... Yes, you can take it. Thanks, Miroslav, please.
Very brief response regarding the Green Climate Fund. It's really, it was a beacon of hope for developing countries that there will be financial resources for climate action in their countries financed by the developed world. But what we see is that the administration of these funds is too difficult and that the money is not really flowing, because people partially also don't trust one another and these kind of things. And but with the technologies that we are working here on, there will be developed platforms which will deliver certified impact and smart contracts which will automatically trigger the release of funds. And once it will be obvious that really there is impact delivered for this kind of climate finance, the donations, the contributions to the Green Climate Fund will also go up, because it's expected $100 billion, but for the time being, they don't have more than 10 billions or so, but partially also because they have this difficulty of implementing so many projects. They don't have the human capacities, but this kind of technology will solve that. It's 100%. This is the future of global climate finance.
And I may add to that as well, and maybe build on the previous question on what is the vision. And part of that at the technical level is to reduce cost of being able to track climate value at its whole spectrum, to be able to catalyze the flow of finance to go along with that value in a very transparent and symmetrical way between investors and projects. But that vision of climate value and financial is just one part of it. Another vision, which is crucial, is the radical collaboration for specific projects and for global challenges. And for that, there needs to be a fundamental focus on inclusive and access to technology, so that it's not something that is something behind proprietary and IP. And that's also why we often try to focus on the technology that we have and that we are developing, how to make it accessible. But the third probably part of the vision that's very relevant to it is avoiding top-down solutions to local problems, understanding that collective intelligence is also fundamentally bottom-up action. And in relation to the Climate Fund, that relates both to the communities that are on the ground are the best at knowing some of those solutions and being able to empower them to drive the projects and the project pipeline needed, but at the same time catalyze the investment not just from centralized funds, but also from collective work towards financing those projects, so that I, when I'm sitting in my house in Connecticut, can finance a project in Lake Chad in a way that I can also track the value of that project. And so hopefully the vision of the technology is reducing the risk of me as an investor, but also from the humility that the best and most knowledgeable people around the projects that are needed on the ground are the community that's in the ground. So I think that kind of fits also with the different visions that we need in place, and transcending just international funds to anyone, and actually I would say everyone has to be part of financing and driving the climate action that we need, because the ultimate vision is that we can have a sustainable planet for centuries.
Thank you, Martin. Good. Oh, yes, Catherine has a, okay, she's wonderful. She builds on all of these. So, all right, please.
Je suis désolée, j'apprécie beaucoup.
I'm sorry, I appreciated very much your question, but I'm going to answer in English if that's okay. And then we can speak in French later on if you'd like.
Question about these funds and these mechanisms were set up largely for the nation state and for metrics and impacts and mitigations that we want to see in place. And unfortunately, this is part of the problem, right? Is how we want a solution that is ready, set, go, that we can measure, and then we can scale. And there's no reference to the infrastructure that we keep talking about and the actors. So I think that's one part of it, is we need to hack the hackathon. We need to innovate our innovation. We need to really focus on how not just funding for solutions for these actual mitigation and adaptation, resilience and SDG solutions, but what's missing in that is the funding for the collaboration models and partnership models. And I'll have a deck I can share with people too that we created about different partnerships and collaborations around the world. And everyone faces the same issue. The terms are ubiquitous, but they mean different things for different people. And the notion of impact is completely different across the SDGs and across the communities that are using them. So that's a big part of the type of not only the research, but the actual tools. Let's pool those tools as well of how we can build these partnerships in lean, clean ways to get to those solutions. And they are out there, but they're just not, they're brought through in big case studies, but we need them to be more agile and accessible.
Thank you. That leads perfectly into my closing at this point. And let me just say that based on what Catherine has said, think about what all of us do in terms of implementing anything. The first thing we normally do, or we should do, is look at the readiness. Right. So in states, obviously, through all of the various frameworks, take the Sendai framework. I'll do that because I'm with you, NDRR, right? So if we look at that, we have gone through processes of really understanding, are they ready? Are the states ready? And what is missing for them to, in fact, begin to put a plan in place for the Sendai framework? We do the same thing with everything else. I'm going to ask everyone today, are we ready? Are we physically ready? Are we mentally ready? All right? And I think this is a very important point. We're in a transformative time, and everything is transforming. The policies, the way that money is allocated, business, investing, everything right now is in a transitional stage and a transformative time. And we're asking people to do things that I'm not sure, to your point, even around language, that we are really ready to do. So I think we have to take a step back. And much of what we were talking about today is helping people get to that level of readiness by collaborating, because that's the only way it's going to happen. In order for us to share with each other where those definitions lie, where our expectations are, where our capacities and our capabilities are. So I think that's a big part of really this entire day has been focused on all of the wonderful things that can happen, that are happening, all the difficulties that are faced. And I think that we now have to take a step back, even before we start the planning process, and make sure that we are, in fact, ready to engage. So I'm going to end with that, and I really hope that I'll... Oh, Amjad. Oh, you're not? Okay. Would you like to end the session?
No, you can end it. I just want to comment on something.
Absolutely.
About readiness. I'm not sure what are we waiting for. I mean, is there some kind of a divine intervention that will get us ready? I mean, really. So I know that's a difficult question to answer. But in a lot of cases, we are all ready and we are practicing it. And I think the best way to practice is really to form collaborations at our own level, expand it as much as we can. Because I don't think any divine intervention is going to come. And that's my view. Sorry.
I do agree with you, Amjad. I think starting at our own levels and moving forward. But we do have to make sure before we start the work that we are really inclusively understanding where everybody is in the room. Mm-hmm. So that's the only point here. Anyway, thank you. And there is a reception tonight. I'm going to hand it back to Dr. Ibrahim to give us his final words. All right.
Please join us.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the moderators for the day, particularly Caroline Quinn, Terry Hasdorf, and Deborah Johnson. And I think we have had a very, very, very interesting and engaging discussions, and it's quite rewarding. Without going into any further details, because I can see that it's almost 10 minutes to 6. By 6, all the system will be shut down. So we have here concluded remarks for the day. I think we'll leave it. Tomorrow we'll do that, maybe in the morning. But now, after having such a long day, we are having a reception at the Nigerian Mission, which is between 44th and 2nd Avenue. It's just like 3-4 minutes walk from here. And from here, we can really walk to that place. It's 6 o'clock. The reception is ready. And it's going to be for about 2 hours. You're all welcome to the Nigerian house. Thank you very much.